In this video, I want to share with you a spiritual concept that I like to call the divine order. It's a very comforting concept because it basically says that what you own through your inner state, through the hard work you put in, you will get eventually, even if the outer world isn't reflecting that right now. What you haven't worked on will be ruthlessly taken away from you as if like some kind of crime mafia boss was coming to get that money. To understand this, we need to look at a quote by Emmett Fox. In the long run, no one can retain what does not belong to him by right of consciousness, nor be deprived of that which is truly his by the same supreme title. What does it mean for something to belong to you by right of consciousness? To understand this idea, we need to look at the mirror principle, which you might have heard before. The mirror principle basically says that our world is a mirror. The inner and outer world are romantically connected. They are in some kind of symbiotic relationship that you can observe when you do the inner work. You might have heard the concept as above, so below. Many people don't understand the second part, as within, so without. And before we go into the spiritual woo-woo, magical realm, I have to say that this is a very practical teaching, a very practical understanding, because your inner worlds, which consist of your thoughts and your emotions, are the stimulus, the things that incentivize you to take actions. And when you take actions, you create habits. The habits you maintain over a long enough time horizon amplify your results and create your life. They dictate the trajectory of your life. So if you have terrible habits, your life's going to be shit. If you have great habits, you can almost guarantee that good things are going to come your way. So as you can see, your inner world does matter. I'm going to share several different examples that are going to really make this bulletproof, and you're never going to forget it. And at the end of this video, I'm also going to give you some practical things you can do to actually have things by right of consciousness. So this isn't going to be a theoretical video. It's going to be very practical. The first area we're going to look at is everyone's favorite, money and wealth. A documentary that I'm constantly recommending to people is this lesser known documentary called Reversal of Fortune. It basically had a film crew follow a homeless person over the course of a couple of months. But before they followed this homeless person, they gave him a proposition. They gave him $100,000 and they said, look, we'll give you this $100,000 if we can film how you spend it. So the setup was very clear. It was very obvious. And he even knew what the setup was. He knew that the film crew wanted to watch his demise. He knew that they wanted to see him recklessly spend all his money and end up back to square one. It was obvious. He said to the camera. But here's the crazy thing. Despite consciously knowing their intentions, despite knowing that he had an opportunity to do something amazing and great, he actually went back to square one. He actually was back in the streets broke in a couple of months, and he ended up appearing on the Oprah Winfrey Show and explaining the situation. But this experiment was a little bit cruel because this guy almost had no chance in hell of maintaining that money. If you look at most homeless people, they're afflicted with mental illness, terrible traumas, which really distort their views and their options. So when he had this influx of $100,000, something that wouldn't ever happen in the real world, he wouldn't just get $100,000 for no reason. It created a bubble of excess potential that he wasn't able to hold. $100,000 was too much for him because he didn't own the prosperity that is aligned with that number in his mind. He didn't have it by right of consciousness. So when that happens, there's a bit of a cognitive dissonance between what's happening and where we are in our mental state. So what has to happen is you either have to level up to meet that objective, to meet that ideal where it's at through doing deep work, or more often than not, you sabotage yourself and go back to your previous state. This is why you see a lot of people that previously were in toxic relationships. They meet someone who's healthy, someone who is right for them, someone who is caring, who is aware and conscious, and they will sabotage our relationship. They will cheat on that person. They will do the most ridiculous things just to go back to what they believe they deserve, which is being traumatized and staying in that negative relationship. It's the same thing with money. If you have too much money and you don't know how to handle it, you're going to blow it because you're not ready for that. You don't own it by right of consciousness. And this plays out in so many different areas. I actually asked ChatGPT to compile a list of a bunch of athletes that have made at least $10 million and have gone bankrupt. The famous example that everyone talks about is Mike Tyson, who at one stage had like $400 million. He earned so much money, but he blew it, right? In 2003, he had to file for bankruptcy. Now, luckily for Mike Tyson, he's had a bit of a resurrection in recent years and has been able to make some money again, but it's still a fraction of what he was doing during his heyday. A whole bunch of NBA stars, NFL stars, athletes, musicians become one-hit wonders. They have their streak of good years where they're making millions and millions and hundreds of millions, but they always somehow blow it up unless they owned that state by right of consciousness of prosperity or developed it, which doesn't really happen. We see this in the realm of fat loss. Ozempic is incredibly powerful or popular these days. Look at this picture here. This is a guy who used to be obese, and he lost a bunch of weight for The Biggest Loser. He actually won the competitions. The guy, his back is, I'd say, actually bigger than what he was now. So what happened here? And this is not making fun of this guy, because a lot of these shows create an unnatural environment.
2.7 kilos.
Why do you think you only lost 2.7 kilos? Keep pedaling, get it up there. Keep it above 80.
Probably because I didn't train hard enough.
You really think it was just because you weren't training hard enough?
I don't know. I really don't know.
You think you're overeating?
I was sticking to my 1200.
That almost forces success. In The Biggest Loser, the person has got coaches, they've got pressure, they're on TV. There's all these incentives that are there in the show that don't exist in the outer world when they are left alone. So they never earned this idea of being healthy, of being fit. They didn't get that by right of consciousness through their own merits. They were kind of forced to get to that point. And when all those surrounding variables have been removed, they resort back to their baseline. So that's why this guy is now obese again. And perhaps, certain things in the body make it easier. Maybe the fat cells that he had previously make it easier than him to get obese again, as opposed to someone who's never been there. But it largely has to do with the state of mind, not owning that idea of health through right of consciousness. Even vegans can get fat if they don't pay attention. I remember I went to the shops one time and I saw this guy I used to know who lost a bunch of weight. He used to be a meat eater and was really large, and he got on the vegan diet. He lost all the weight, right? I didn't see him for a couple of years, and then he was really big again. But he was still eating vegan food. But when I looked at his trolley, he had a whole bunch of, Beyond Meats and the lower quality vegan food. He wasn't eating actual vegan food. He was eating like processed garbage. So his mind, because it didn't own this idea of health, he didn't have that by right of consciousness, found ways to get fat even on the vegan diet. And this is just the way it is. It's always going to find ways to reverse whatever you've achieved unless you own that state. How about this guy? This is Paul Dillette, a bodybuilder. He was on lots of steroids, allegedly, back then when he used to compete. And as soon as he gets off the steroids, he gets tiny. Like, he looks like someone who barely goes to the gym. You need to own it by right of consciousness. There are no shortcuts in life. There's this balancing act, whether that's through chemicals, whether that's through your actions. Things tend to resort back to where they were unless you own that state. You notice that a lot of people that lift weights and do it naturally and put in the work for years and years, they're able to maintain their size for years and years, even as they age, only losing their muscle perhaps in their 60s, 70s, etc. How about Conor McGregor? During his rise, he was really someone to be admired, someone that had a lot of focus, a lot of determination. He used to read a lot of New Thought books. I remember him sharing all these quotes about mind positivity. And once he made his hundreds of millions, he's now allegedly, what some people might say, a cocaine addict. He's now a bit of a degenerate, has been caught up in a lot of illegal issues that he probably wishes he never was involved in. It's because the rise was too sharp. The rise was too, it was just too much for him. He even recently said that it broke him. And this is what tends to be the norm when it comes to people that have success. A lot of people don't like these new influencers that are making hundreds of millions or basically a shit ton of money from things that are not really that beneficial to society. Like this lady here. She made like 57 million from her bands, like her fans account. More money than the vast majority of people will ever see, or a combination of like probably people's families put together will ever see. And you might be thinking, oh wow, she's so lucky she's made this much money. But if you look at her now, her life is still hell. I saw a video recently on Twitter where she was fighting with a boyfriend. You can see there was some serious issues there.
The bitch. You, I got asked you nicely.
So although you might not lose your money straight away, you are going to get something that's going to create a balancing effect. The universe is going to attack you from a different angle, whether that's your mental health, whether that's your physical health, whether that's your financial health. It's always going to be this balancing act. There are no free lunches. So the fastest way to ruin someone is to give them rapid success, undeserved success, or to put them on. You see these industry plans all the time in music or whatever it might be, in movie stars that came out of the blue and were just put on. They don't have much acting talent. Those people's lives end up being ruined because they haven't gained the success and don't own the right of consciousness that's associated with it. The inverse is always true. Whatever takes you a bit of time to build, you get to keep for longer. You see this often in business. Now, Naval Ravikant once said, on a long enough time scale, you will attract what you project. But don't measure, your patience will run out if you count. So if you do the work, you're eventually going to get what you deserve. A true entrepreneur can never really go bust, even if their business goes to complete shit, because they've developed the skill set to rebuild and reinvent themselves. Their new business might not do as well as their previous one, but they usually do better than the average person because they've earned the right through doing the work. They own that state of consciousness that has a certain level of prosperity associated with it. Assuming they don't multiply by 0 and end up in jail or die. The person who's lived a healthy life from their own internal locus of control, not outside influences, not a game show, not Ozempic, not something outside of them like steroids, can usually get back in shape when needed because they own that state of consciousness. So now you might be wondering, how do you own a state of consciousness? How do you get something to be internalized? Well, there are no cheat codes, right? You have to do the work. You need to resonate with the frequency of the thing that you want. And you can do this in a few ways. Thinking thoughts that are aligned with the archetype that you're trying to create. This can come in the form of daydreaming, mastermind groups where you collaborate with like-minded individuals in the spirit of harmony, really popularized by Napoleon Hill. Consuming relevant content by people that match the archetype that you're trying to create. I actually have social media feeds that basically are curated towards this person I want to be. I don't have AI slop on my feed because I don't watch AI slop, and I am very intentional with who I follow, who I subscribe, who I engage with, so the recommendation engine goes in my favor. Affirmations, visualizations, reading, these things can give you those thoughts that you're looking for. Doing the inner work can also remove limiting beliefs. So doing mentorships, coaching, journaling, inner child work, shadow work, shamanic journeying, holistic therapy, dream work, breath work, psychedelics, but you have to be careful with that, and also tapping. Those are things that can definitely help you. Long story short, you need to own it in order to see it. You need to have it by right of consciousness. Peace.